Thank you, Barbara, for the introduction. Well, I'm Kathy Jensen, and we're going to start with introductions. And our first person to introduce will be Jazzmine Lindsey, our star for the day.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jazzmine Lindsey. I guess I am your speaker with lived experience. I am a full-time student at WGU, getting my secondary education degree. And I am also a full-time mom of 3 heathens that you probably hear running upstairs right now. Yeah.
Thanks, Jazzmine. Next will be Sujatha.
Good morning. I'm really happy to be here. I'm Sujatha Jagadeesh Branch. I'm statewide advocacy counsel at Northwest Justice Project. And in that role, I oversee the Youth Law Task Force and the Economic Security Project, which does public benefits and healthcare advocacy. I also have a deep background in disability rights advocacy, litigation, and policy advocacy. And I think this is a really great topic for us all to be engaging in.
Thank you, Sujatha. And I am Kathy Jensen. I am an attorney at Northwest Justice Project and also a descendant of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes of the Flathead Indian Reservation in Montana. And I have been with Northwest Justice Project 17 years, working with disabled and youth. Prior to Northwest Justice Project, I was an in-house counsel for one of our local tribes. So I have, as you can tell by the white hair, I've been around the block a time or two. So I welcome you all and thank you for attending. I did want to start the session with just a little story, if you'll all indulge me for a minute before Jazzmine starts. I grew up on the reservation, and I lived in an area where the most of the reservation was in one county, and I lived at the south of the reservation, which was a different county. And so whenever, as a child, whenever my home got broken into, which was quite often, we lived in a tribal housing development, and the tribal police would say, oh, well, we can't help you because you're in another county. And the county would say, well, we can't help you because you live on the reservation. And so I grew up in kind of this strip of land that, as a child, appeared to be pretty lawless, where folks could do whatever they wanted and however they wanted to whomever they wanted. And so it was quite alarming to know that I was growing up in an area where I wasn't safe in my own home. And so that is actually why I went to law school, because I didn't think that anyone should have to grow up in that kind of situation. And so I just wanted to share that a little bit so that we can have a little perspective about, what this session is all about, and how systems are intended to be helpful, but they're not always helpful, and how in some instances they're even more harmful than they are helpful. The school I went to was predominantly a Native school, and it was also situations where the Native population, I'm not enrolled, I'm a descendant, and so I wasn't considered tribal. Growing up, I was, as a descendant, I wasn't considered not tribal by the folks that did not have any descendancy or tribal membership. So it was kind of that la land at school as well. And in some cases, it's pretty harmful when you grow up in that kind of a situation. And, political and personal agendas impact the decision making that adults make or that other people make, as well as implicit and explicit bias. And as youth, the youth interact with several different systems all the time: education, housing, disability agencies, public benefits, such as TANF and food benefits, CPS and DCYF, as they're called now, or to just name a few. So there's a lot of different systems that are put in place to work with the youth and families. And you'll hear how these systems interacted and impacted youth from the amazing Jazzmine Lindsey, who will be talking soon. And then we'll also have a question and answer session afterwards. So be sure and put any questions that you have into the Q&A or the chat. And if not, we have some prepared questions for Lindsey or for Jazzmine as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jazzmine.
Hi. Thank you for the awesome story. So I'm just going to go over briefly, I guess, what I've experienced. I'm going to try and fit it in quick 15 because there is a lot. Before I go, I'm going to let you know, I'll use a few abbreviations. So for the people who don't know, when I say JRA, I'm talking about Juvenile the Rehabilitation Administration, I believe is what it is, or something like that. That's just juvenile prison for me, at least. And I think that's the main one I'll be using a lot. So I grew up poor. And when I say poor, I mean not just like below poverty level. I mean poor. I started off in Spokane, Washington, and with my mom, who ended up going through a pretty bad divorce with my stepdad. So she got a new boyfriend. New boyfriend, of course, was abusive, and as abusive as they come, and then kind of turned abusive towards me. So then I, of course, made reports to the school. CPS kind of got involved, and then they didn't. It was kind of like open shut case. Mom said it didn't happen. Guy said it didn't happen. So it didn't happen, I guess. I started out really like, I guess, taking all my feelings out on everybody else, all these bottled up emotions. At this point, I'm 5th, 6th grade. I got kicked out of school for some aggressive behavior. And then I started going to another school in the district there. And I kept on it was just a repeat cycle. My dad moved actually from Texas. And I was frustrated. My mom even left with this new guy to Detroit. So now I'm just stuck. My dad offered me this awesome, I'm his only kid. And he offered me this great thing. He said, move to Texas with me, Jazz. You'll better life, better everything. Well, went there, and I was his only kid. So he really didn't know how to talk to a girl going through puberty with all these emotions. So I ended up moving back to Spokane because my mom moved back to Spokane my 8th grade year. And there was still built up emotions from all of the prior things. Well, my mom's homeless in Spokane. We're on the SNAP program at this point. I'm in the 8th grade. I started off at Gary Middle School. We're living in one of those 90-day homeless transitional programs. Yes, that's what they're called, transitional program housings. And pretty much we're just transitioning. We're just moving along. Me and my mom get in a domestic violence situation between me and her, and I was the aggressor. So I was arrested and I got on probation. And this is actually, I believe, the first time I ended up meeting Rosie with Team Child, which is one of the only programs that we got connected with that actually helped us. Well, I should say me. It's not us, it's me. But I got connected with them through my parole officer. And from there, what ended up, we are kind of like, me and my mom are I'm under strict guidelines, obviously, from a probation officer of certain things I can and can't do. I wasn't hearing it because the problems with me still were not addressed. So I'm still outlashing being as a troubled youth, is what we'll call me, because I was difficult, for lack of better terms. I get in trouble at Gary Middle School. I was skipping, doing a bunch of stuff because there is a gun at school. I knew about it through rumor and other things, but it was not mine. So I know I got the brunt of the long-term suspension, as they're called. Me and I know 13 other kids were suspended long-term, but they ended up being able to come back earlier. I know I got the long-term. The kid who obviously had the gun, he was expelled permanently, but I long-term. So we had to switch schools because my mom wasn't going without me having a school. So then at this point, I go to Chase yes, there's so many. I went to 3 middle schools this year, and I just want to mind you guys that this happened. I believe I switched to Chase right before winter break. So I only went to Gary for a month or 2. I go to Chase, I get in a fight with another girl. And it's actually funny because I was telling the other ladies in the panel about this story, and I actually had to sit back and remember it. And I remember we just moved the night before this fight to a new little apartment, whatever you want to call, on Desmond in Spokane. Moved there and end up getting, and I don't know, maybe I didn't have enough sleep, but the girl was really rude to me. She hit me first multiple times. I hit her back. Well, they give me a suspension there for 3 days. Okay, that's fine. You don't fight at school. Fine with that. Well, my mom goes to pick up my stuff because she wasn't going with me, not like knowing my schoolwork for 3 days. And I end up not having any, like, my stuff wasn't, all of it supposedly wasn't there. I wasn't there, but my mom saw the girl because the girl didn't get expelled. And of course, it was a girl of a Caucasian little girl. And my mom was livid. She was like, why is my daughter suspended and not this girl? Like, they both did it. They both should be in trouble. This is not okay. So I ended up getting moved. They voluntarily, how would I put it? They told my mom, I'm not expelled, but if she would like to move me schools, they will not fight her on it. So my mom took that as I'm not welcome, moved me to a different school. I got moved to Shaw. Again, at this point, all it is I'm fighting, I'm skipping class, I'm not being the student. And mind you, I'm not unintelligent. I'm smart. I was really good with my schoolwork. So the schoolwork that did get done, it was always good grades. So nobody at this point is still asking any type of questions. I think this was at the point where I ended up going to Lutheran Family Service, some counseling place. Went twice. I don't even know why I went, because they said I was fine and kept it pushing. So I go to Shaw. Now this is after winter break, 2 months into going into Shaw. They, like I said, I was skipping. They would call my mom. Oh yeah, I'd get in trouble, and they'd call my mom, and they'd be like, "Oh, Jazzmine seems like she's having a hard day. Maybe you want to come pick her up." My mom is not a nice mom. Like, I love her, but she's not one of those moms you just come pick her up. So my mom I always remember, she'd be like, "Why do I need to come pick her up? Is she in trouble?" "Well, no, but she's having a hard day. Maybe you want to take her home." My mom would be so mad. "Well, if you guys aren't telling me I have to come get her, I'm not coming to get her." "Yeah, I think you need to come get her." And then I'd have all these like parent voluntary takeout, whatever they are, on my thing, on my like attendance record. Mind you, I was never suspended. It was just always voluntary, but it was highly suggested on her. Well, it just kept on building up. I got in a big altercation where I was in an altercation at school. I not only hit a student, I hit a teacher, and I hit the teacher pretty bad, and I was arrested and charged with assault. It wasn't just a regular school fight, and I was expelled from District 81. I remember this day because, yeah, I've been arrested before, but this was different. And anybody who knows how the school is set up, I was in the office, and I remember everyone, first of all, nobody asked me, "Jazzmine, what is wrong? What's going on?" It was just, why would you do that? Why? Like, what's going to happen now. You're going to jail. Yep. And I wasn't crying, had no issues. Like, at 13, 14, you would, as at least me going into that field, I'm going to be concerned. But anyways, they don't walk me through the front doors, which is 5 feet from the office. They walk me down this long hallway in handcuffs so everybody can see, put me in the car, take me to jail. And this is where really my work, Team Child's work with me, I should say, really began, because they got me into school, because no school would take me. And when I say no school, I mean, we went to the valley. We were going everywhere. And every time they saw, "Oh, she's seen a gun, that she has a gun on her record." Well, it wasn't her. She didn't bring it. Somebody else. Nope. and she was hitting staff. Nope, nope, nope. It took Team Child fighting tooth and nail for me to get me into a school, which the only reason why we were even connected to them was because my parole officer from prior things. Fast forward after this, it was kind of like my hands are up. I was tired of being poor. I was tired of being angry. Moved in with my dad for my 9th grade year, half of it back to Texas. That didn't work again. Then I moved with my mom and we were squatting in a house, I remember. And no running water, nothing. Tired of that. So when I went off on my own, not even 2 months of being on my own, I was charged with 2 counts of first degree armed robbery. And it's 6. I think it was originally, I don't know the original. I just know it was first degree, and it was however many people were in the house. I wasn't there. That's a whole different story. Because, and I'll just say I was charged because even though I was not there, I was implicit, guilty by association. And I ended up being sentenced, took a deal, and I was sentenced to 30 weeks JRA time as a juvenile. And I pled down to 2 counts of 2nd degree armed robbery as a juvenile. And I served my time in a JRA facility. I got amazing people there. I don't know if everybody's amazing. I don't know how everybody's experience is. Amazing people there. I was released with so many tools, so much knowledge in my head that I did not have about myself, and coping skills, just the group, because I ended up going to a group home right before I was released, which was great to help me re-enter society. I was released, not angry. Well, I'm released at 16 because I spent my 16th birthday in there, to a friend. They drove me to the DC, the child support office on the west side of Spokane, dropped me off to my mom's friend, because my mom moved back to Detroit. My mom is not even in Spokane. I don't have no parent. They kind of dropped me off, and when I ended up moving into the boyfriend's house, who got me all involved in all of this craziness. So pretty much after leaving JRA, there was no success set up from there. There's no plan after, there's no nothing. From there, fast forward 2 months, I'm working really hard with Rosie in the sense of I got into school. I was going to Bancroft because they took me, which was amazing. And I was doing my packets, working really hard, and met an awesome teacher there who I thank every day because I love her. And she to this day is one of my role models. I get involved with drugs, not me personally, because I don't do drugs. Drug deal gone bad because I needed money to make ends meet. I was kidnapped. And when I say kidnapped, we're not talking I was with friends and they didn't let me out. No, I was kidnapped. I was tied. I was sexually assaulted. I was pistol whipped right on the west side, Wellesley of Spokane, right by the Zip Trip. I think it's super crazy. I thank God every day for this nail salon in Spokane, because my nails were sharp enough that when they left me in the garage, I think is what it was, I didn't take time to look around. And it was dark. I was able to cut the duct tape off my hands, so I was duct taped to a chair, escape through a 2nd story window. It's one of those, a barn type of window up top. Yeah, I jumped, sprained my ankle from there because there was all this garbage. I think I jumped on top of a car or something, jumped off, ran to Zip Trip, called the police. The police came. From there, it's 5 o'clock in the morning at this point. I'm in, obviously they're taking my statement. We go down to the detective's place, the center, and I don't think they fully took me seriously. They took pictures of my clothes. And then 2 days later, I was arrested. Not for drug dealing, because I told them I wasn't going to tell them anything. I was arrested on a U.S. Marshal hold, and I couldn't even tell you why, because obviously it's a U.S. Marshal hold, so they can do really whatever they want. Because they said they couldn't find me. And I thank Rosie for this, because I've never been an adult. and they charged me as an adult, and I was 16. And they had me in the adult facility. I went back and forth, obviously, but I was in the adult for court. Their reasoning was they couldn't find me. Rosie came, talked to my public defender on the adult side, and gave him all the paperwork of Jazzmine's been in school every day, every single day. So why can they not find? And like my teacher even said they've never called anything, and I was in school all day, but they said they couldn't find me. After that, I think after the kidnapping, my eyes like really got open, and I honestly was scared. I've never been in a situation like that. I thought I was, as they would say, badass, but nope, that scared me. So I kind of talked to Rosie and asked her my options, and we got me emancipated. And it was hard because, you know, you got to show that you're stable, but nobody can give you the hours to show you that you're stable. So I got emancipated, and I was working from 10 p.m. till 6 a.m. And then I would go to Bancroft, and I would go to school until they were half days there. So I'd go to school till noon, and then get home by 1:30, sleep, and then go back to work. And I did that for probably a good 5 months. And then I called Rosie, and I called my teacher, Courtney Smith, and I cried, and I let them know I can't do it. I'm too young. I cannot handle this. Is it okay if I get my GED? Because I didn't want them to not be proud of me, because I'm just so used to everybody just not caring. And they completely supported me. I got it. And from there, it's been nothing but up. But as you can see, I wouldn't wish that situation on anybody, because like I said, there's so many times anybody could have interjected between any system, and nobody did.
You have more to say, Jazzmine, or is that?
No, I think that's it, because everything from there is kind of really positive and has nothing to do with anybody else.
Well, I think we'd like to hear the positive.
Well, yeah, I guess let's not make it so sad. I went on from there. I have my AA. I go to WGU. I have 3 beautifully nerve-wracking, sometimes want to put them back, awesome kids. Me and their dad, we live on the west side of the state now, and I absolutely love it over here. It's so different, so great. I'm working on my bachelor's, because the plan, but you know, plans change. So the plan is to get my bachelor's in secondary education, because I want to get some experience, and then I want to fight from the outside with the experience is the plan. I want to write the policy. I want to be the lady who kind of comes and rains on everybody's parade who didn't do what they were supposed to do for the kids.
Thank you, Jazzmine. I don't see any questions in the chat, but we appreciate your story. We do have a few questions. And one of them is, how would you, at what point would you have liked help, and how would you see the agencies coordinating together? I think you're muted. Jazzmine, I think you're muted.
Sorry. So
It's
from
okay.
from the very beginning, and I say this because the questions, obviously, these ones that were prepared were read to me first, and you guys can see I was gonna write down my answers, but I'm kind of like, you know what? No, I'm just gonna say it so I mean it. From the beginning, first of all, we all know divorce is hard on any kid. So when you have a kid that you know is in your elementary school, that their parent is going through a divorce, was going through financial problems, she clearly called out for help when she said the new guy is hitting them or hitting her or whatever was going on, whether that be true or not, because like I said, CPS said obviously it wasn't an issue. Why right there weren't we like, okay, there's something wrong with her? Because if it wasn't true, why is she lying? If it is true, we need to get her help. There was no interjection. Who could have helped? The school, for sure, because they're the ones who see me every day, 5 days a week, 6.5 hours a day. They could have helped. DCYF or are they CPS? Whatever they are, CPS, that's what I know them as. They could have helped easily, because why just write the book off? Okay, if you don't think there's anything wrong, what services could you have provided, in the sense of, well, this family, no, there's nothing wrong, but you guys definitely need to do mental health. There needs to be counseling in this family, so this can be a healthy living environment, because as of right now, it's not. Something. But no, the ball is just dropped to where that wound just kind of festered and festered and festered. So from the very beginning, there could have been help.
Thank you, Jazzmine. One of the other questions we had was, oftentimes, as I'm sure you found, adults don't really listen to children, or so we're kind of wondering about your thoughts on maybe some advice for adults on how to listen, or children on how to express, so an adult will listen. I know that's a big loaded question, but
that is so loaded. This is what I'm going to say. And this is just my personal, this isn't even because of my experience. Okay. This is because I don't know what age it's happened to all of us. Because even the nicest, kindest of souls, we hit an age and we just don't want to listen to what the kids say. Because I catch myself with my 6-year-old when he's crying and I'm just like, dude, no. And I know it's not the same when it's something serious, but it almost is, because that's somewhere we hit an age where we just don't want to listen to the kids, to where I've been catching myself. And what I would say is just remember, something that may be nothing to you is something to someone else. And regardless of the age of that person, because that child, that teenager, that student, that client, whatever they are, regardless of their age, they are a person. So whether that situation is not big to you or it doesn't seem valid, it's something to them. So the least you could do is be courteous and give them an actually listening ear and react from there. That's what I'd have to say, because I'm still working on that with mine, honestly.
so one of the things that I find in my work is, a lot of adults decide what's best for children. And so I kind of wanted to hear your thoughts on that, on how to, as a youth or an adult, how to work together as opposed to someone deciding what's best, especially a teenager.
I always make this sounds terrible. But I feel like, so I have to take it back, I guess, to my situation. What I think Rosie did for me is, because she knew what was best. Now, I think this maybe only works with adults with good intentions, which we always hope most adults have for these youth, because they've lived, Rosie always made me think it was my idea. I'm 24 now. None of the good things I did were my idea. Now that I look back to the things, me staying in school, that was not my idea. But somehow, some way, she always made me think, like, I really thought, oh, I'm coming up with this. This is like, I don't know. She never made it seem like she was, how would I put it? Making me think she's telling me what to do because she knows what's best. Somehow I was 16, like, oh, I'm smart. I know how to get an apartment. I did this on my own. No, it was all her idea. She was smart. She found an apartment close to it was always the adult that helped, but they didn't fully take the lead. Because I feel like when you have a youth that is going through things to where they're already an adult, because all the things I went through, I was an adult, maybe not the smartest adult, but I was an adult in head, and mentally I was an adult. So that's like when you're sitting here trying to tell another youth, oh, this is what's best for you. How are you? That's like telling another adult at that point. No, you can't tell another adult what's best for them and what to do. You got to let them think of it on their own, whether that means you suggest really well and get creative. That's what I do. And that's what I do with my youth at Puyallup right now.
Jazzmine, that's so helpful about effective communication. And we have a question posted in the Q&A that I think kind of relates to the answer you just gave. The question is, Jazzmine, you mentioned that Team Child was able to really help you, but what about the relationship made a difference in your life? I want to know about how they treated you, related to you, treated you, that you had that trust in them to help you. I know what I know when teens go through traumatic situations, sometimes they shut down, and that's a normal response pretty much for anybody going through something like that. How did you open up?
Oh, see, they want to make me cry. that's no, that's a great question. Nobody's actually asked that one. Everyone always wants to know the logistics. How would I put it? They didn't give up because it wasn't Team Child, just Team Child. Like I said, that teachers and Team Child aren't always cohesive, as we all know. Schools and it was both of them that really, how would I put it? They didn't leave. If Rosie were on here right now, she would say Jazzmine didn't do it all willingly. Rosie got cussed out so many times. Oh my God, her front desk lady, who I love are so sad when she quit. I can't tell you how many times I called her all types of B's, F word, and going on the phone, leaving. Oh my God, so many. I was rude. I was a teenager. I was a brat. That's what I was. And what made me just, it's okay. Because I can't tell you how many times I cried with Rosie. She didn't leave. She didn't up and move to Detroit like my mom. She didn't expel me and send me to the next school as a problem. She didn't just pass me off. That's the issue. And I think, and just as a side note, I think for a lot of adults, what we need to realize, especially with teenagers and kids, is we already know kids 9 times out of 10 do bad behavior for attention. Because they need some sort of, if they're not getting the good kind, they'll get the bad kind. At least for me, I know it was. We're just testing. We want you guys here, but when you've had so many people push you off, that's what. Let's just hurry up and get it. You're gonna leave like the rest, so let's just hurry the process. And Rosie and Team Child did not leave. My school teacher did not leave. I am 24 years old, and Rosie doesn't even work for Team Child, and I could call her right now and be like, do you remember that case you worked with me on? Can you please send me the thing? And they only work with people to 18. And she wouldn't bat an eye. She would do it for me. It's more of it was my family.
Thanks, Jazzmine. Kathy, do you want to throw out the next question?
Sure. Thanks, Sujatha. So one of the questions that we have is also on if you had any suggestions on how to reach the youth, the ones that don't want to be reached, or the ones that are out there, and where do you find them? How do you get them to want to work with you? And I get that on the last question a little bit, where you stick around, you don't run. But aside from that, do you have any other thoughts on that?
That was kind of hard. I'm like running through my head. So I was actually just talking to one of the attorneys at Team Child about something kind of like this. I don't know, it's really hard. So if we're talking about kids who aren't a part of your program or your whatever you're running, they're not a part of it. They ain't signed up because they're not feeling it. They're not feeling it. You can't force somebody to do something they don't want to do, especially not a hard-headed teen who's not going down the right path. You got to relate. And if you can't relate, you need to find someone who's doing good to relate. Because I'm going to tell you now, when I came from, how would I put it? What would be my most vulnerable? Right before I went to jail, I wasn't really working too closely with anybody. I was just kind of screwing off. Not to offend anybody, but this is all honesty, if some white lady came up to me and was super just, I have this program, I know you're poor, blah, 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 and was trying to help me at school, I would have looked at her, laughed, and probably kept it pushing. And so I need somebody relatable, and it doesn't even matter the race. If I was in that situation, I need someone who's like, hey, can you, blah, come join this. We're doing this. Hey, I get it. It's corny, but try it out for a day. And then that's your 24 hours as whoever the program person is to step in. That's your 24 hours to get that kid that day. But you got to be relatable. Youth aren't coming to something that's not relatable, because how can I trust you if you can't relate to me? How can you help me if you don't know what I'm going through? So if you don't know what I'm going through, then you need to have someone working with you who does. And that's honestly, I think for a lot of people, that's the hardest part, because it's hard to get people who have gone through that to kind of be working on the other side. So I get it's kind of it's a catch-22.
We have a couple of questions, and it's so helpful to see the perspectives about communication that come from the questions, and also what you're saying, Jazzmine. So we have several questions. The first one I'll throw out is, I'm curious about efforts to prevent turnover in staff, because so many of the youth whose lives I touch, the therapists, providers, social workers, have such high turnover. So Jazzmine, you may have some thoughts about that. Kathy or I may have thoughts as well.
I only have a little thought on that one, because like in my story, I didn't get to work with many. I worked with one, but I guess I could say I don't want to work with somebody if they're just going to keep turning over. At that point, you might as well just work with me on your own and do your best. I feel like that would be more beneficial for you to be my ear, whoever I'm talking to, or help. I don't know, figure something out. Because if it just keeps turning over, I'm just getting pushed off more. And that's kind of the root of the problem, is getting pushed to the next person. But I think you guys can elaborate on that more than I could, because I didn't get that chance.
Kathy, do you have any thoughts about this one?
Well, coming from my perspective, I would say for staff turnover is to make sure that you've got support. It's traumatic for the youth that you're working with, but it's also hard for the person trying to work with the youth, and maybe reliving some of their own experiences, or maybe not understanding what the youth is going through. So I think support from the employer is a huge piece of staff turnover.
And I think sometimes that relates to how much people are getting paid, and incentives. So the way employees are being treated. And I'll share just a really brief advocacy experience I had. So the nonprofit law firm I was working in was representing a youth, and the attorney who was doing the representation left the organization. And I think there wasn't like complete communication about his transition. I was his supervisor and I took over the case, and it definitely was hard for the youth and hard for me to form that relationship. So I think this question is about therapists and other service providers, and it's also about us as lawyers and law firms. So I really take the question to heart about any kind of transition for a child or youth, especially someone who's experienced a lot of instability in relationships with adults, can be really traumatic and difficult. And we have to be really careful and thoughtful about how we communicate when there is a transition, and really plan for the long term. Like if a case is going to take some time to resolve, then do our best to staff the case with somebody who's really going to be able to work with the child or youth over a longer period of time. And I would add, sometimes that's the lawyer, sometimes it's a paralegal or a legal assistant. And some legal assistants are really amazing in their ability to communicate effectively with clients and relate with clients.
The other piece I would add to that, while I'm listening to you, Sujatha, thank you, is the cultural piece. I work a lot in Indian country with Native families, and trust does not come easy. And so you have to take the time to get to know the community and the families you're working with, be respectful of their traditions, and that's a huge piece of, I think, of being successful with youth.
We have another question in the Q&A. And this is a question for you, Jazzmine. What kept Jazzmine in relationship with Rosie and Team Child, even when she didn't think she wanted to be? What actions did they take to keep her from ending her communication with them?
She blew up my damn phone. I'm sorry, I don't know what else is like. She's popped up at schools when I'd go to jail, because like there's stints, because you know when you're on parole or probation, you get in violation, you go. I'd go, and somehow Rosie was always there on other business, but then she'd sit down with me and I just roll my eyes. I'd be like, yeah, I'm doing good. And then she'd be like, but you're in here. um, she made an effort. Like she made the effort. That's why you guys are all so important. Like, as obviously as youth, you guys are here for us, but she did all the effort. I just finally responded and then picked it up, if that makes sense. Because she called my mom. She had other clients that like we were all friends in a circle, and she'd ask them about, hey, where's Jasmine at? What's she doing? Blah blah blah. I've been trying to get a hold of her, and one of them would always tell on me, or she found a way, or then some, and then it would just end up. I never actually talked to her from those. It would be, it sounds terrible, but I'd be in a situation where I'd be like, I don't know who to call or who to help me. And then I would just think of, well, Rosie always calls me and she's always there, because that was my person who was always there. And that's who I'd call when I didn't know how to get back into school. Hell, when I didn't know how to fill out my FAFSA for college. That's where I say the relationship never stopped. That is my person. And I know I'm not the only person she does that for, or they did that for. Her and Dan helped me fill out my FAFSA, even after everything. So I think it's just the relationship continued when I didn't want it to, because she continued it. She made sure, just because you're not talking to me doesn't mean I'm not talking to you. Very annoying, but I love her for it. And I'm thankful for that.
So I don't see any more questions in the Q&A or the chat. So Jasmine, I'm going to ask you another question on the youth, and if you had any other guidance on how to reach them. So let's say in your situation, you responded positively to Rosie eventually, but do you have any thoughts on youth that don't or refuse to have contact or get really upset because of the, I would call it pushing that Rosie did, trying to get through to you?
Well, I got really upset when she pushed me. Yeah. Sorry, that one is just, it's hard, because as much as it's on you guys, like on you guys to like try and figure it out and connect with us, you guys can't do everything. At some point we have to want it. So if it's at the point where you guys you're blowing up phones, you're trying to figure it out, you're calling, you're texting, all those kind of things, I really don't think there's anything else. If you have someone who can relate to them and you are meeting them at their level, that is a big thing. Meeting the youth at their level. We're not just calling to, hey, come down to the office so I can talk to you. If that homeless kid is living in a tent and you're trying to get a hold of them and you're not going to that tent, then you really don't want to see that kid. Like you don't, how much do you really care at that point? Because I know if I was that kid, you can't meet me at my level. I'm cool. Rosie's picked me up from the trap house before, like to take me to court, and never batted an eye. And when I tell you there's like 4 big black guys out there, like who are scary, who you would not want to see at night. This just cute little old white lady in her little Subaru came and picked me up by herself. No issues. And I'd come out, here I come. Like, so if you have done all those things, at that point, you have to wait for them to come to you. Just make sure you keep that line open. But I guess my thing would be like, just make sure you're meeting them on their level. completely on their level though. I'm not saying Rosie never went inside, which I don't think they'd let her, but she met me on my level. And I think that's a big thing. So if you guys can meet them on their level, go to wherever their homeless encampment is, go to their house, and don't be scared to, kind of thing. Because Rosie would come to my house too, even when she knew my mom was in there getting her butt whipped, like, or my mom came up black, like, no issues. She knew there was problems in there. I guess it was all about me. So it didn't matter at that point. Jazzmine, I'm outside. Come on, let's go eat. And I think one of the other things is when you're meeting them on their level, because that's just the first step. That's just to get them to talk to you. Continue it, but don't make them feel like they're less. And I think that's a big thing where communication will be like, oh, I just met with this lady, but now she got me messed up because she tried to make it seem like I'm just this poverty case. Every time Rosie would meet with me, like the day she picked me up from a trap house, I just still remember that. And I just think it's so funny because everyone's like, who's the white lady outside in the Subaru? I was like, oh, that's my ride, and left. She took me to go eat. She didn't ask if I ate. I surely haven't ate. It was never, hey, let's go over this paperwork. Let's go eat. Where do you want to go eat? And that just became our thing. It wasn't, she knew I was hungry, but she never asked, are you hungry? She was, we're going to go eat. So if you're having a kid who's dealing with poverty and you don't know if they've ate, let's not ask if they've ate. Let's just feed them. And, so meet them on their level, but still have the respect for them to not make them feel like a charity case, because you're not going to keep that kid. Because I wouldn't work with you, because I'm nobody's charity case.
We have another question, and I'd like to add to really the incredibly powerful suggestion Jazzmine made, which is from the perspective of service providers or legal services organizations or government agencies. I think what Jazzmine, what you said means not being bureaucratic and rule bound and having some flexibility in the way we communicate and the way we work with children and youth. Because like if we have a system where if you want to get our help, then call us. Call this number between 9 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Like that's something that some people would have a really hard time remembering and following up on. So thinking through our processes for intake and also for how we communicate after we've done an intake to make it really realistic for children and youth to get services from us. So the next question we have is, are there ideas of mentorship programs that are effective?
Oh, I don't actually, I guess, let me look at a different ideas, because I've actually been myself looking for a mentorship program, but one has not spoken to me yet. I don't know. I really don't know the answer to that one, because I wish I had a mentor that was amazing. Like I will say for me, and I know I've been on the other side and now I'm coming over here kind of backtracking. If I had a mentor, I would not care if their experience was lived. I would not care if they completely understood what I went through. I would not care if they were a multimillionaire and never knew what poverty was in their life. The only thing I would care about that mentor is that they were genuine. They were real. That is like I think that would have been the big thing. So I'm ideas for a mentorship. Make sure all your mentors care. Like when I'm sorry I keep saying Teen Child, but that's the only group that really worked with me. Dan there, white boy, completely white collar, love him to death. He's so corny, he's great. I would let him mentor my brother, who I've been through some crud. He's been through some crud, but now he's serving 17 years. And I would say I'd let him mentor my brother, not because they were the same, but because I know Dan cares. My brother would let him mentor him because he cares. He's not a coming at you like, oh, I completely understand what you're going through. No, he's just, well, I don't know what you're going through, but I'm open to hear it. And he hears it without judgmental ears, kind of thing. And then gives you suggestions to do it. I shouldn't say he doesn't just oh, well, if you just go back to school and do blah, 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 you'll be great. Well, it's not that simple. I have to take care of my mom and my sister. And but like he at least understands the hoops that you have to, that particular youth would have to go through. So my idea for mentorship would be make sure they care and they're not ignorant to the fact of what their mentee has to go through.
So one more question. We've got about 10 minutes left, and we'll leave the last couple of minutes for Sujatha to wrap us up. But one of the kind of off of what you just said a little bit is one of the purposes for this was for folks to see how youth are whole people and not just individual, like not just education, not just housing. And so I'm curious about some thoughts you had on how all the agencies that are out there, as we know there's therapies, attorneys, or social workers, different providers out there for youth. Any thoughts on, as a systemic response, on how to work together for the youth as a whole person as opposed to individual little pigeonholes? Another
I
loaded
don't
question for
know.
you, Jazzmine.
They always save the best for last. I don't know if I can answer that one. Like, and you guys know the system better than I do. I just know the system on where it kind of craps on you. I don't know how they would work as a whole, but the communication needs to be there. That, and what I mean by that is I was telling you guys, I work for a school district. Since I still work for them, I'm not going to throw them under the bus because I still need my job. But I work for a school out here who has a whole homeless program, like the whole thing. And their students are always struggling. There's a lot of kids going through chin's position, all trying to figure it out because I kind of popped into the classroom one day. And I asked my principal, hey, so have any of these kids connected with Team Child? Because on the west side over here, Team Child's big. There's one in Tacoma. There's one, like it's big. What is Team Child? And my eyes got so big because I'm like, you have a whole homeless program and you're telling me your administration doesn't know anything about a program that could benefit these kids and help these kids because you got kids surfing couch to couch with their friends. And I gave it the benefit of the doubt. And I was like, okay, well, let me ask other principals. I asked all the admin. Nobody knew. Went to the counselors at this high school. Nobody knew. And so with that little piggy right there, we need to not be ignorant to the fact that we're not just passing them off. When they leave school, they're not just done with school. When it's not involving with the CPS case, it's not just that. We figure out a way where it's a requirement where each entity knows about resources to the next. But the fact that nobody knows about each other and what each person offers, to me, is a problem. And it's a huge problem. The fact that I was referred to Team Child in jail and not when I was expelled from an elementary school, like that's nuts to me. That to me, that's crazy. Or the fact that you are I'm in CPS, going through CPS and all these things, and me and my mom aren't referred to the SNAP housing or anything yet because that's not what they deal with. That's crazy. So I think it's not what these entities can do. It's just holding themselves more responsible. Take the 5 minutes to Google search nonprofit youth help. 30 of them will pop up, and then figure out what they do. It's not hard because I did it for the kids at this high school and was figuring out, okay, well, it's not just Team Child here. We have this other, because they have other little homeless youth shelter things here that I was trying to get them involved with. And because there's a lot of LGBTQ stuff and nobody knew about them. And it doesn't take long. So it's not that what they can do, they need to start holding themselves more responsible and stop passing the buck because we're all responsible at one point.
Thank you, Jazzmine. That's an amazing presentation, and we really thank you for being present with us today and answering all these hard questions. And I'm going to turn it over to Sujatha now.
Thank you so much, Kathy and Jazzmine. That was incredibly inspiring and really eye-opening. And it's so important to hear from youth and children themselves and not make assumptions about what they might need. And I think the fact that we had a lot of questions about how to communicate effectively, it really opens doors and opens a lot of minds, because this isn't just about what the law says, this is about actually applying it and implementing it so children and youth get what they want and are on a positive track as you are. I would like to, I have just a few things to say in closing. One is that one of the conference materials is a chart that I created of different administrative agencies and the role that they play with some links and legal citations. And that's kind of the nerdly part of the workshop today. So I'm not going to do any screen sharing or talk in any detail about it, but I think it's helpful in providing some context about what it means to have a lot of administrative agencies involved in a child or youth's life. And it also provides practical information about exactly what we've been talking about today, which is that there are a lot of different programs and administrations and agencies and nonprofits and government agencies that are responsible for providing services, but sometimes the communication doesn't happen, the connection doesn't happen, the understanding of the big picture needs of the child or the youth doesn't happen. And I'm hoping that that resource will be a way for folks after this workshop is over just to take a look at and get some perspective about what agencies might be helpful. And I also really welcome, please feel free to reach out to me at Northwest Justice Project if you have questions about how to use that document or comments about what's missing. And one big thing I think is really missing is information about the criminal justice system, juvenile justice, and corrections, and the role that police play. So really looking forward to making that as useful a tool as possible. And I see lots of really positive reinforcement of the information Jazzmine provided. And I'd like to spend just 1 minute summarizing what we've talked about today. So we all really share a belief, Kathy and Jazzmine and I, that it's important to understand what the problems are in order to solve them. And I think Jazzmine did a really fantastic job of sharing that and sharing ideas about solutions, and also that solving problems requires a range of expertise. And the greatest experts are children and youth themselves, because they understand exactly what's happening to them. And in order to engage them, we have to know what they're really going through. And listening to people with diverse and different experiences, just like what we're doing in this conference, really helps us find the solutions, and really looking forward to working together to make that happen. I think there's a lot of work to be done. I think Northwest Justice Project and the other organizations that we've talked about, we've discussed today, can really help and be part of the solution. So really appreciate being able to hear your questions and think through solutions. And Kathy or Jazzmine, any final words?
Keep being great.
And the same to you, Jazzmine. And I see in the post that there's a networking, so there's a link in the chat that there's a networking break if anyone would like to join that. And Kathy, anything you'd like to share?
I just wanted to say, Jazzmine, I think you're great. And good luck with your schooling.
Yes,
Not
thank
that you
you.
need it.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing your day with us.
No, thank you guys.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Sujatha, Kathy, and Jazzmine. It was a very powerful presentation. And thank you to our attendees. And this concludes our session.
Take care. Bye, everyone.